Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a further talk on the Society of Genealogists Collections. Today we're focusing on family papers, letters and diaries, and the presentation is going to be from Elsa Churchill, our very own genealogist at the Society. Welcome back, Elsa.
Thank you. Yes, this is part of a regular focus on the SoG treasures. And today I'm going to be talking about some of the remarkable things we have in the library's collections, how the special collections fit in with the rest of the library and archive collections as a whole, and demonstrate some of the ways that you can find out about them. So please feel free to put any questions in the chat, and if there's anything I can answer, I will do so at the end. So, oops, that's it. The Society, as you know, having been founded in 1911, has a remarkable library and archive and research hub in our new 6th permanent building at Wharf Road. The whole ethos of the things that the Society collects into our collections are really resources that concentrate on the places where your ancestors lived, UK and overseas genealogy resources and records, particularly for the United Kingdom, and of course the places where the British migrated to and from. The other focus on things that we bring into the library are things that your ancestors did in their lives, and that could be anything from their occupational records, education, apprenticeship, military service records, tax, criminal records, monumental inscriptions, all sorts of things like that. And we do, of course, have a unique collections really on what's been done before. These are encouraging people to compile and write up their family histories and pedigrees, and of course a huge amount of genealogy research notes and papers which have been deposited within the collections. And frankly, you're likely to find published and unpublished family papers, letters and diaries within all of those sort of classifications and categories. But I'm really going to be sort of looking pretty much at the collection of the compiled family histories and the archive of unpublished papers, letters and research notes. That's going to be my focus today. So not everything's all in one place. We have the library of books, electronic and micromedia, both on and off the shelves, requiring you absolutely, therefore, to consult the Society's library catalogue and order in books, etc., that you require. The Society's archives really do include original records, where we have become a repository of original records, but mainly the manuscript research papers and notes can be found in the special collections, the document collections. A little of the library's collections have been digitized, and that our digital collections are being transferred from the existing platform into a new SoG Explore, which does mean there's quite a lot of places where we would go to look for things I'm talking about today. You'd need to use the library catalogue, you'd use the various lists on the website, which lists all the things we have in the archive. And again, there's several lists there, all in anticipation of we hope it's going to be a new catalogue. But at the moment, that catalogue's very much in the background as we're compiling it. So we're at the case where there's more places to look rather than one pathway. So I do recommend using the library information pages to use some of the links and guides there to when you're finding what we have in the library and the archive. So let's start looking briefly at published items within the collection. That's really books, microfiche, microfilm, CD-ROMs, etc. And for that, we would use the library catalogue on the website. You can find that from the search our collections tab on the website. The default pathway for the library catalogue is making sure you've clicked on the library catalogue, and that means its tabs comes up in yellow, and that sort of allows you to use what's called a browse by subject option. That sort of that pathway is sitting on top of this search here, and you can just put in a surname as a start for a search. But if you select to move from the browse search into more advanced search, you can actually use terms like diary or accounts or memoirs and letters or correspondence and indeed family history to narrow down some quite interesting things. So one of the things I've definitely noticed is how in the book collection, how many of the letters, diaries, and memoirs have been edited and published by the local record society. We subscribe to most of the local record society publications and catalogue these monographs in detail. So it's well worth doing that kind of search within the catalogue. And here, for example, are just a few of the recently acquired items which are sitting on the new acquisition shelves at the library in Wharf Road. And this could be something from the personal correspondence of Sir John Belladon and his circle, a memoir of a surgeon, mathematician, and sportsman, letters of Henry Gladwell from the bailiff of Drayton Estate in Northamptonshire, or the papers of Nathaniel Stifke, and indeed the family correspondence of the Moores of Loseley Park. So all of these are edited. You can see the search terms you'll find will be things like correspondence, the Moore surname. These are all ways of using the catalogue to narrow down these amazing publications from the local Record Society publications. And of course, it's fair to say that the people who leave early diaries papers, which become of the historical, of genealogical interest, and which tend to be published by the local Record Society publications, certainly seem to concentrate on the more literate middle class families and an awful lot of clergymen. And of course, yes, you would expect us to have the famous diaries of Parson Woodford or Thomas Turner, who was a overseer of the poor in the 18th century of the parish. And so those are some more famous diaries. Not only do they provide information about that particular individual, their families and associations and networks, but also the context of the times and the communities they live in. But again, you'd expect some things that have got the Crimean War diaries. I think if it's not clergymen, then it's certainly a lot of personal war diaries tend to crop up. Often those with family estates and archives are those who are represented in the local collections and local archives and the publications of local record societies. So the Norfolk Record Society's an edition of the correspondence of Lady Catherine Paston, presumably maybe even a later descendant of the famous 15th century family of Paston letters. Again, you'd expect us to have those. The correspondence of Lord Fitzwilliam of Milton and Francis Guyborn, his steward from the late 17th and the early 18th century, published by the local Northamptonshire Record Society. Of course, if your ancestors may not be of that sort of class, but if they are tenants or employees on that estate, I mean, I'd be certainly checking the index if I had a connection with any of the estates owned by that particular family. Or there may be correspondence together, particularly for a particular topic. Here for the Cheetham Society, looking at the correspondence about the building of the Ringley Chapel. So again, it's amazing insights into why some of these papers and correspondence might have been collated of being of interest. Here, for example, the Northamptonshire Record Society's volume of the estate letters from the time of John II, Duke of Montague, from 1709 to 1739. The rather detailed index, which is a nice part when these letters have been edited, transcribed, and indexed, but down to surname level, shows that there is mention in the letters of a Richard Alsop, a brewer, or Humphrey Althorpe, carpenter of Kettering, who appraised the estate of John White for his goods, probably for a probate process. So again, the interesting incidents of other people mentioned within their network and associations in journals are quite, and in this case, from the administration of the estate, again, where you can find that kind of connection. And of course, the publications of the record societies do tend to favour the published correspondence, letters and diaries of the great and the good, the town clerk of Norwich, or the Bishop of Oxford, or the local clergyman. But again, edited because he's something we always say. You want a chatty correspondent, you want a chatty clergyman to to be making comments on his parishioners, even fantastic. But as a society encourages people to write up and deposit compiled family histories and papers with the societies, we do have diaries and letters of the not so wealthy or influential too, included within the many thousands of compiled family histories and what we call the family history tracts, small of off-print of pamphlets or unbound, sort of unpublished family histories that we bind together. I think there are about 5,000 of these sort of bound off prints and typescripts within a nigh on 300 volumes of what we call the family history tracts. And the family history tracts are just part of a sort of collection of 9,000 compiled family histories that we hold within the library. So, for example, within there is the First World War diary of Robert Douglas, a London bus driver who kept a private diary copied by his family and published in this little sort of little pamphlet, and again a copy deposited with the society. And again, you can search on diaries within the library catalogue, and an awful lot of diaries are certainly within the family histories, such as the Alice Turnell, the Diary of a Tenant Farmer's Child, 1888 to 1892, and again, Anne Rudolph's diary. Actually, we've microfished that, and we're putting the microfiche out in Wharf Road literally as we speak. So you won't be able to need to order that in from off-site store for very much longer. It'll be in the library. But the rest of the family histories are being digitized with Family Search. We have a current partnership for scanning and digitizing those, and hopefully that'll make many more of the compiled family histories available. And again, another the private diary of the Anglo-Boer War diary of Private Charles Holmes, again given transcribed by the Victorian Military Society and bound within our sort of family history collection. Again, a Berkshire Bachelor's Diary, being the diaries of letter of Francis Pryor, a recusant or Catholic and gentleman farmer of Ufton, Berkshire in the late 18th century, or extracts of birth, marriages and deaths from the diary of Mary Fox, later Mrs. William Evill's diary from 1785 to 1819. And just like some people may note family births, deaths and marriages in a family Bible, they're often noted in day books and diaries and incidental books, which have ended up in the where they can be bound in the shelves of the society's collections. Where there is an off-site store reference in the catalogue entry, you need to quote the BX number and order that in. So in addition to books, microfilms, microfiche and CDs, which are all listed on the library catalogue, we do, of course, have an extensive archive manuscript collection, and that's really what I'm going to be focusing on for the last part of this talk. It's fair to say the archive collections aren't as well listed or catalogued as we'd like, but this is improving and a work in progress. And I'll explain how you can use some of the existing copies of the old paper lists and card indexes, which have been scanned prior to creating a new online archive catalogue. And you're in that sort of halfway point where you don't have to come into the library to view those finding aids. You can view them at home. But the archive collection comprises what we call the document collections, the topographical collections, the special collections, card indexes, and roll pedigrees. And I think it's really within the document collection and special collections where you're going to find most of what we call really the letters and the diaries. The Society of Genealogists document collection are really a miscellany of family history papers comprising all sorts of miscellaneous research notes, filed in surname order. They could be extracts from records, copies of documents like wills, lots of family personal papers and ephemera, and letters that are arranged by surname, i.e., family name. And some of these have been copied onto microfiche rather than remaining within the additional books. And these have come from a variety of sources. Sorry, copied onto fiche rather than in the original boxes, I should say. But they've come from a variety of sources. Quite often they might be donations from solicitors clearing deed boxes or family case papers, often come from the pathway via the British Record Association, which acts as a clearinghouse offering advice on where these records may be lodged. Hence, many of the items in the document collection bear the British Record Association or BRA stamp. And I think it's probably one of the most important places other than the document collections could be the special collections. These collections are usually the notes of one genealogist's work over a lifetime, looking at several families with a common theme, invariably comprising more than one box full of material. So then there's something we haven't wanted to split up by surname because the families they look at have a certain integrity together. However, these collections often arrive in a removal van. Most, but by no means all, are housed in boxes and off-site store. And I'm going to sort of look at some of the collections that will contain interesting papers within them. All new special collections have traditionally been listed in the Genealogist magazine, and there was a bit of a hiatus during lockdown and the closure of the library, but there was a bumper report of the 20 new accessions that had come in from the special collections listed in the March 2024 Genealogist magazine. And in addition to noting the collection in the GM, it used to be, prior to moving, that the only lists of the collections and what was in them were the old paper lists at the office or a card index listing the surnames in the special collections. But now there is a lot more information about the manuscript archives available from home via the library pages of the website. So if you look to our library, you'll find there are that's another shortcut to the Society's catalogue for books and other CDs and microfiche. But for the archives, you really want to look at the archives finding aids links. This is where you will find a link to PDFs of the old archive paper lists and the card indexes, which you can now view from home to see, is there anything relating to the surnames that I'm interested in that might indeed contain letters and diaries, etc. We put these online so that we could, as part of our making better access, but they're also using these online resources to make a bigger and better online archive catalogue, which is due to come soon. And there are collection guides, including the guide to the archive collection, which is worth looking at. But however, from the archive collection finding aids, we'll give you a scanned copy of the old card index, a scanned copy of the surname index of the names represented in the document collection, and really the sort of special and small collection, what we call the collection reports. And these three are the best place to start for looking for the families you're interested in. So the PDFs of the old list of the document collection just say there's something of interest, there's something relating to a surname that's in the document collection. So looking for the surname for the list L, we see that there is something for the name Longmire, but actually it doesn't tell you what it is, and that's why we need a better listing of these, which we're working on. But within the document collection are lots of personal papers, for example, which can add up depth to the family. So when we call up the box that does contain the document collection ephemera for the surname L, we actually found this original letter from William Longmire, thanking his friend Mrs. Cotham for her support while he awaited execution in Newgate. It is quite remarkable. It was deposited in the Society in 1999, and cited amongst the family paper accessions in the March 2000 Genealogical magazine. And it was difficult at that time to understand the whole background to the story. Thankfully, the infinite age with online resources and pedigrees and blogs can bring historians together across the Atlantic. I'm indebted to our former archivist Simon Fowler for originally posting the question about William when we received the letter and reposting it in his blog in 2012. As descendants of William came and sort of filled in some of the story behind this letter, and that's much clearer. According to the proceedings of the Old Bailey, William Longmire was indicted at the Central Criminal Court on the 13th of October 1725 for violent theft and highway robbery, having assaulted Thomas Warren on the highway, putting him in fear and taking from him a hat valued 5 shillings. Oops, my notes have jumped around a bit. Whether this was a premeditated vicious assault or a young man's stupid jape, he was actually sentenced to death. And we can see from his letter, William clearly acknowledged his foolish act had ruined his life. Not knowing when or if the death warrant might come, he seems remarkably resigned to his fate and is asking only for his friend's company, her prayers, and some paper. The Old Bailey Online story continues, and that we actually know that William Longmire was reprieved and actually was able to meet up with Mrs. Coton at chapel the next Sunday. However, reprieve didn't mean release, and William was subsequently transported to Virginia, and the various online pedigrees compiled by his descendants that tell us what happened afterwards and place the story in its genealogical context. William was actually baptized at St. George Hanover Square in 1705 and died in Virginia in 1749, having married and had 3 known sons with descendants living today. But again, this poignant letter of his time in Newgate has just ended up in the Society's collections. So that was in the document collection. Now you can view the names in the special collections by starting with the card index, which you can view from home. This is a very rudimentary name index telling you if a surname was represented in a special collection. So here we can see the old card surname index saying the name Lith is represented in the Verney Sargent collection. Now from there you can go on to the collection report. There's a PDF copy of the collection report for the Verney Sargent collection, and that's actually quite a detailed listing of what's in each box in the collection. So it's very typical of the kind of things you'll find. There'll be family papers, extracts from records, from parish registers, marriages and burials, research notes, family trees, photographs, but also in this case, lots of correspondence and indeed copies of letters. And there's a lovely file there. There's referring to an intriguing file from various Methodist ministers to the Reverend Dr. Lith. And so this intrigued me. What kind of letters were they? I found it a fascinating file of letters from Methodist brethren, which when leafing through seemed to suggest to me that Methodist ministers seem to spend most of their time corresponding with each other, asking either for a pal to substitute for them while one goes on holiday, offering that all expenses would be paid, or asking for recommendations or to provide a character witness for ministers being appointed to various posts. And though it did seem that Methodist ministers seem quite anxious to find each other a wife. And there's a letter there from the Jesse Engoose, which is the thing that says who's writing from Leek on the 24th of December 1846, saying, in this circuit, there are 2 young ladies, sisters of highly respectable habits, accomplishments, etc., and each of them is worth at least £1,000. They are thoroughly Wesleyan and are now at an interesting age, the elder 23, the younger 21, and I know that they would prefer a Wesleyan minister to anyone else for their husband. If you are unengaged, you would find either of them a valuable acquisition. Let me have an early reply stating how you are circumstanced in this matter. I can give you satisfactory answers for any questions you may propose. We are on the most intimate terms. I have no designs in writing this, but a desire to see them the wives for Wesleyan ministers and to promote the happiness of a brother whom I esteem. But what is done will have to be done speedily, or they will soon be picked up by someone else. They are 2 prizable materials to remain long in hand. Write soon. You promised at conference you would write to me. In haste, for this matter has only just occurred to my thoughts. Jessie Angus, I trust you will regard this as a purely confidential conversation. Now, it's not clear from the actual collection report who this Reverend Dr. Lith so you need to look So you need to look at the collection as a whole to see who it was. And on first reading and trawls, I wondered if it was the rather famous Wesleyan missionary, Dr. Richard Bursdall Lith, who does appear in the pedigrees, 1810 to 1887, who'd been a missionary in Fiji and New Zealand. But he doesn't seem to have been unengaged in 1846, having married in 1830. However, he also had a younger brother, John, who was also a Wesleyan Methodist minister, who was at that time unengaged. He married 2 years later in 1848, and other letters make me think it really was the younger brother. And I'd be very anxious to know whether he actually married one of those two rich Wesleyan heiresses. Either way, it's a lovely story to go through the collection to read there. There's a lot of interest in the famous missionary brother in New Zealand, where some of his letters have been collected in the New Zealand National Library. And at SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies, they too have got lots of letters from the famous Dr. Richard Birdsall of Lith. So it'd be interesting to see how our sort of letters and correspondence fit in with his volumes there. But it's interesting, though, that the letters can be scattered, and it's interesting how many are at the Society of Genealogists. Quite often, the collection reports indicate that there's correspondence or letters between genealogists talking about the research, such as here in the report about the CR collection. There's letters from Janet Hugh, genealogist in the Isle of Wight, on her CR family, and another letter from Frederick Allen, a genealogist, and they're all sort of corresponding with the compiler of this collection, who was Edward CR. It's a large family history extending into London and the home counties. The family particularly connected with confectionery and tea selling, with 4 boxes containing lots of fascinating pictures and information about the shopkeepers, and lots of photographs and family letters about his research in there. The Ridout collection report shows there's an account made by Thomas Ridout of his capture by Shawanese Indians on the Ohio River and his life with them in the spring summer of 1788. And his account was transcribed from the 1811 original. So again, this is his recollections made sometime after his adventures, but it does include the transcription of the diary and the letters. He was apparently captured by Indians in Ohio while collecting debts owed to him. So great, it's just the kind of thing that family historians would tell me about your family. What family stories have you got? And these being accounted in the collection. And the collection report showed there are several diaries and personal letters within the Lister collection. And there's a lovely poignant diary, the diary of Ellen Lister, that showed on the day before the First World War broke out in the hot summer of August 1914. The Lister family went to see the popular New York comedy play Potash and Pearl Mutter, which had crossed the Atlantic to rave reviews. And so she has one line, sort of, war against Germany arrived in another paragraph about her excitement of going to see that play. The Darcy Hart collection is one of 3 important collections of research notes and pedigrees relating to Jewish families that came to the Society in 1989. And fellow of the Society of Genealogists, Ronald Darcy Hart, was an honorary genealogist at the Jewish Museum from 1930 to 1970. And box 1 to 7 of that collection contains his correspondence and notes with clients. And box 8 to 14 is mainly pedigrees and family files. It's quite a complicated collection to use, and it really does need much more better listing. And while I was helping a reader use the boxes, I came across some rather fascinating collection of letters in box 1, folder C18, which is the Cohen file. This file comprises 31 letters to Louis Cohen and family of South Street, Finsbury, from Matilda Hyman, née Godfrey, written from Kingston, Jamaica, between 1840 and 1848. There's about 2 to 3 letters a year. Matilda seems to have been a governess or companion to the Cohen family, who provided her with letters of testimonial prior to her coming to Jamaica, where she appears to have found a similar position. The first letter in the file is actually from Matilda's uncle, Mr. Hyman, thanking Mr. Cohen for the testimonials. Matilda writes regularly about her life in Jamaica, especially about the Jewish community there and the ease or otherwise of Jewish worship. And she also mentions all her various relatives who all seem to be on the island. Letters would be an excellent genealogical source and the springboard of a project to identify her uncle and aunt and the various cousins that she names. They provide an interesting insight into the Jewish community of the 1840s and its networks before Kingston became the capital of the island. In her first letter, Darcy Hart, of the Darcy Hart collection, she writes to Mrs. Cohen, and Matilda says, "You told me previous to my departure I should soon get a husband. I assure you I see plenty of gentlemen, but I'm sorry to say the generality are so depraved. I should be afraid to trust my happiness to their keeping. 'Tis true in England there is depravity enough, but not so glaring as here." Well, Matilda did find herself a husband within a year, a Mr. Michael Hyman, who was possibly one of her cousins, one of two younger brothers within the Jewish community. And in her final letter in 1848, she reflects that she's been nigh on 7 years in Jamaica and married for 6 of them, and reflects on how her life has turned out. And these letters are absolutely charming, informative, and really important for the history of the Jewish community there. And I think they, Matilda and the Hyam and Cohen families, really deserve to be much better known. There's a collection report which I want to go and investigate, which is box 3, has records of the Duke of Kent's letters, and from 1809 to 1815. And that little throwaway line, I've really just got to go away and have a look at. We don't have a huge amount of this material yet online, so I'm afraid it is a case of using the archive lists and coming to the society to discover them. One online collection is the index to the Coleman's catalogue. He was a document dealer and often sold letters. Indeed, for the codes we've used, you can see that there are L for letters, and indeed often marriage contracts and all sorts of other documents, which he actually put on up for sale. Sadly, our index to the collection of catalogues that we hold, covering, I think, the period 1859 to 1911, only tells us that something was put on sale. It doesn't tell us where the document ended up, but it is an interesting lucky dip, and it does contain letters. Now, I'm going to finish up quickly with telling you about a bit of a secret that we are hoping to make a much better online catalogue, which we're calling Collection Plus. And this will enable us to not only list things in the special collections and the document collections much better, but identify quickly and search across them all for diaries, personal correspondence, etc. So here, for example, was one of the more recent acquisitions for the Hollingworth collection, letters about particular people, the circumstances surrounding the birth of someone, as well as sort of research notes, pedigrees, etc. that you find. This opens up each folder, and again, we're making much more detailed notes about what there is within the folders. We can search across all of the collections for people mentioned within it if we list them in the collection description. And again, sort of folding out what's in each folder. But I just did a search, how many of them mention letters, which is something I can do. And again, all sorts of things within the collections. A copy of Joseph Gandy's diary with lots of letters, lots and lots of family letters, correspondence. And this is really the life stuff of what you'd expect any genealogist's research to accumulate. And that's what has so much of those have ended up in the research notes and papers which have been deposited in the Society's collections. So just as a aide-memoire, you need to use the Society's catalogue, which lists books, etc., where you can search by surname or use keywords such as letters and correspondence to see what's been published. But do use the library pages for the archive finding aids, particularly for the documents and special collections, because that's where you're most likely to find these little gems and treasures that will bring such a smile to your face. So if you want to come and actually view what you've found through from the archive lists or the collection reports, you'll need to book a place using the link on the library pages of the website to book your visit. Give us time to get the materials from storage. We do ask you put a request for at least 1 week in advance, all of the manuscript material, the document collection, and the special collections are off site and need to be ordered in. And when you've booked your place, you'll find a link to an order form where you can fill in information about the item, and Christine will have those ready for you. So again, that means you can make your booking by planning visits. There is a link from there to the bookings visit page, and again, as part of the booking process, it reminds you to fill in the order form, which you can fill in. So there is the order form within in the more information on the visit page. I hope you'll see that there's some really amazing, unique things which have come from family collections. We're only really starting to learn more about them ourselves, partly because we can now search across those collection reports with so much ease, and it'll be made a lot easier for you to search across those collection reports and come in and view the remarkable collections and oddments that we have acquired. And again, it's quite a remarkable library. I'm sure you didn't know that we had quite so much. I'm going to finish up there, and I think I'll stop sharing my screen.
I'm ready. Well, we have a couple of questions and a comment, but we'll deal with the questions, and there may be more while we're talking. Is it possible to search for any details that might be available with a geographic search? In this case, particularly interested in details about an ancestor in the area of Sarawak, where he lived immediately prior to the First World War.
I mean, now, yes. You can put Sarawak in as a search term in the library catalogue to see what material we have for Sarawak. It won't just be family papers, it could be extracts of copies of records. So Sarawak's a very good search term in the library catalogue, the books, microfiche, microfilms, CD-ROMs, etc. But because the scanning of the collection reports particularly, it does mean that Sarawak is something we can search across, because we've scanned the collection reports as PDFs which can be searched. So yeah, it's something you can do now, and will be able to do a lot easier when all those collection reports become the basis of the new archive catalogue. So yeah, certainly that is something you can absolutely do.
And the next question: do you accept family memoirs, diaries, and papers?
We do, and there is guidance on the website for doing that. Sort of basically you read the guidance, and there's a little form you can start a conversation with us to look for donations and into the society. I'll try and get the link and put it in the what have I done? I don't know what I've done. I'll try and get the link and put it into the chat if I can, but I've just somehow managed to blank off one of my screens. I don't know what I did there. You can still see me, I take it? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all right.
So it's in here somewhere.
Carry on with the questions
research.
And we'll see if
yes,
we can
deposit
find
your research.
Yeah, there we go.
Right. In fact, follow-on question from the same person. If an old bound family diary is fragile, how would you care for it during scanning?
Carefully, I think is the answer.
Yeah, just my thought as well.
as carefully as we possibly can. There's a link to depositing material with us in the society. Right. Yes, we have an archive team who look after things as carefully as we can. I mean, and sometimes things have to be looked after because they are crumbling away, and so we'll try to look after it as much as we can. We have all the sort of equipment we need to handle things carefully. We wouldn't want to break it if we can. but we'll treat it as carefully as we can, and it may be something is so valuable we might need to get expert help in conserving it first before we even touch it. But that's the nature of a lot of early archives.
Right. Deborah has offered a comment, at least. I don't know if she wants to offer any more on it, as wondering whether she's related to Ronald Darcy Hart, as her Hart ancestors in London were Jewish back in the 18th century, but married out of the faith when they went off to become Americans.
Well, I mean, there are several Jewish collections and I know the name Hart is represented in them. Whether they connect to Ronald Darcy Hart's own family history or not, without looking, I don't know. But I mean, it'd be worth looking through the various collection reports. Start off with the Jewish collections. There's a guide to the Jewish collections on the library pages, and then look at the collection reports for Darcy Hart, Hyamson, Collier Ferguson, and the Isabel Morley collections, and that's enough to keep you going for a little bit.
Well, I think that's the end of the questions in chat. I will certainly add thanks to Elsa. It doesn't matter how many times you hear Elsa talk about the same topic. There's always something to be picked up that you didn't really sink in properly before. So thank you, Elsa. Are we now going to stop the recording and
I'm
offer
going to stop the
hands?
recording now.